Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this rose wirework necklace, and this is what it looks like here. So it's all these individual roses that are then put together. So I've made a larger one in the middle and then graduate them in size, and then it looks like this. And I've also added these beads just to give a little bit of colour to it. It's going to hang nicely from the neckline because of also how I've attached them together. It's going to hang in this kind of V shape, and then I've added my chain on the sides and added a clasp as well. So this is then what it looks like. So if you want to learn how to make this necklace, then stay tuned. So these are the materials that we're going to use. First of all, here I have two different gauges of regular round copper wire. The first one is a 0.6mm. This is actually going to be the base wire for the roses. And then here I have a 0.25mm wire, which is going to be the weaving wire around the 0.6mm. And then I'm also going to be adding some beads here, and these specific ones are garnet gemstone rounds and they're 3mm. So that's just what I'm going to be using, but you could really use whatever you want to. And then finally, to help put the piece together and finish it off, I have some jump rings here, and then my clasp and my chain. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So then we need to cut the lengths of wire that we'll need. Now I have 3 different sizes of roses and they all have different lengths of the wire. The large rose here, what I use is 50 centimeters of the 0.6mm, and that's the base wire. And then I use 2.5 meters of the 0.25mm, and that's going to work for the whole rose. And then for the medium rose, I'm using 40 centimeters of the 0.6mm, and then I'm using 2.2 meters of the 0.25mm for the weaving for this. And then finally here for the small rose, I'm using 30 centimeters of the 0.6mm for the base wire, and then I'm using 1.8 meters of the 0.25 here. So then right at the beginning here, I'm going to start taking my 0.6mm wire first of all, because we just need to get it started. We're going to work from the middle and work our way outwards, building the rose. Then I'm going to take a pair of round nose pliers just for the central loop there, and then I want to basically make a loop right in the middle, a little bit small. Just make a full loop so the end of the wire here comes back around and meets up with itself pretty much. And you can really decide how big you want this to be, and obviously you can decide that with the whole piece. You can make it quite an open rose or quite tight and closed. That's completely up to you and your personal preference. So I'm just going to make sure that that lays flat there so the end does meet up with itself. So there we have a full circle, and what I then want to do with that circle there is then take my 0.25mm wire, so my weaving wire, and then we just want to attach this as well, because we kind of need to use them both continuously alongside each other. So I basically want to just get one end of it here, and then I just need to attach this. So I'm just going to go through, and you can just use the end to attach it with first of all before we get to the long end and working with that. And you just want to keep going, basically coiling around the base wire. So I'm just going to come up from the bottom here and get through like that, and then do that a few times, and then that'll basically be attaching it. And then I'm going to do this a little bit for a few millimeters or so, and then we need to push it all the way to basically the end of the base wire. So push it all the way to where the closed circle is. So that's then the point that I'm at now here. I have my weaving wire attached and it's coming out, just out straight up from that circle. But before I move on, like I said, I've gotten a few millimeters away from the very end of the base wire, so I've not wrapped around the full circle yet, because we need to incorporate the base wire again before we do that. Because that's what I mean, we need to use them alongside each other all the way around, because we need to keep kind of connecting them. So what I'm going to do is just hold on to the circle, then I'm going to bring my base wire further around a bit here. Just almost, you could say, continuing the circle, but making it almost a bit more into a spiral, but not a tight one. So I'm going to make sure there's an open space there between the inner circle and then this wire bringing it back around. And we need it to come down then towards where the final wrap is. And then once I'm happy with how that's going to look, because this is then starting to create the middle part of the rose, I'm then going to take some chain nose pliers here, and then where I want it to connect, I need to then put my pliers in, and then make a bend in the wire back outwards. So I just flick my wrist so the wire goes back outwards. There's something like that here. You can see it goes back outwards now. And then we need to then also connect the two. So basically the principle is going to be every time we have a little bend like that, that then meets up with the level in towards the middle. Obviously right now we're in the middle, but we're going to get further and further out. But every time we have a bend like that, where the two levels meet, you could say, that's the connection points. So what I'm going to do is, in my case here, I'm wrapping my weaving wire. So this is coming out from below, and I'm going to wrap it around like this to continue. But to connect, I'm going to come up, and instead of going down through the circle to continue here, because I'm working with the long length, I'm then going to go over the outer wire, the outer length there, the little point that I just bent, bring that around, so pull the weaving wire all the way around that. So now just, it's kind of like a figure of 8 weave here, then around the 2 wires, and bring it all the way around again. Then I want to just get to the end of my weaving wire, because it's a small space that we're working with. And then we need to go back through the middle circle. Let's get hold of it here, because I'm coming from there, then I've wrapped around once around the outer wire, you could say, then go back through the middle circle, pull the weaving wire all the way through. Obviously it's a little bit small to work with right now, so it can be a bit fiddly to hold on to, but as we make a bit more, it's going to get much easier because you're going to have more work done, so there's more to hold on to there. So that's once, but because it's fine wire, I want to always make these connection points and connect them twice. So I'm coming down again, so I'm going to go up between the 2 wires, and then just repeat. So around the outside one, pull it all the way, to then go back around the inside one again. So find the end of my weaving wire. Kind of have to do it because it's such a small space. We have to put the end right down through the center again. And then just pull it all the way through. So we then get back to the inside circle. And now they're connected. So that little kind of shape, you could say, little curve that we added, is kind of symbolizing a petal. And that's how we're going to keep doing them. But I'm going to change them up a little bit. This is the inner part, so when I get a little bit further, I'm going to do a couple more. Then I'm going to start using my chain nose pliers to make the petals instead, to give them a little bit more shape. But then now I'm here, what I'm going to then do is continue coiling around the inside circle again for a bit. Basically there's not going to be bare wire showing, so I'm going to get to the end, go through the circle again, pull it all the way through. Make sure when you do this as well you don't get any kinks, so if you see anything forming, so if this was kind of gone like that naturally, this would turn into a kink. Just make sure to undo it to not damage the wire. Pull it all the way through there. Make sure your wraps are always nice and close together. And then that's kind of the beginning, so I want to do this, like I said, a few more times. So I'll keep wrapping a little bit, but then I want to bring this outer wire around again to form the next petal, to the next point where I want to have a connection point. So I'm going to do this a few times in the same way that I just showed you, but then once I've made a few petals and then I change up how I'm making the petals, I'm just going to show you how to make them as well. So now I made a few more petals there, like I mentioned, just one at a time, and then still bringing my weaving wire with me. Now before I show you how to make the next petal here, what I just want to show you is I've reached my first point where I've reached back around to my very first connection point, but on the next level. So basically that means the base wire that we're weaving on has already got 2 wraps around it from the previous connection point, now the very first one. So I just want to show you how to get through that. So I've wrapped around prior to that connection point all the way right up until it, so right next to it. So again, make it nice and seamless, and then all I'm going to do is just take the weaving wire, so go to the end again just to continue, and then basically almost in a way ignore it, but just making sure that my wire here is coming from the back, or if you're weaving the other way, just make sure to obviously go through the back, but in my case I'm coming from the back, But then to skip over that connection point, I'm just going to go straight over to the other side of it and go through basically that next petal, and then just get all my weaving wire through there. So pull it through, making sure I don't get any kinks. And that's all there is to then skipping over those connection points when you're wrapping on the wire where there is a bit of wire already. Because then the wire that's crossing over is going around the back of it. And you can just leave them all to the back, so it's still going to seem nice and seamless. But then, that's how you then get past the connection points with your weaving wire. And then I gotta make my way to my next point where I want to make my next petal here. So to create the next connection point. So I'm just going to weave a bit further and get to there, and then show you that petal where I use my chain nose pliers instead. So then I reach that point here, and then I'm going to also get my chain nose pliers out, because it's not so much to get specific angles or straight lines in there, it's more just to use them to help make a bit more texture almost in the rose is what I want to do. So obviously the inner petals are just more rounded, but now I want to start adding a bit more texture to them. So I'm just going to use my chain nose pliers by placing them in where the base wire is coming out from basically. And then I want to work my way over towards the next point where I want to have a connection point. And then what I do is I hold my pliers on there, and then I take the tail and kind of bend it against, just gently, it doesn't have to be too harsh bends or anything. And then move my plier to after the bend, and then bend it inwards again a bit here. Move it again till after the bend, then back outwards a bit, and then move it to the other side of that angle. Move it over, and it doesn't always have to be the space of the chain nose pliers that you're using. You can also make a section a bit longer by just moving the pliers a bit further over after the bend. But obviously it also depends where you are in the rose, because in here I still want to try and keep the petals a bit small, and then as we get further and further out, the petals are going to start getting bigger and bigger, so you can just make them a bit longer and add a bit more kind of bends, ins and outs in it. And then the final one here, grab hold of the wire with my pliers and then bend the tail a little bit against the pliers, so now it basically overlaps the rest of the rose, but it then also reaches the point where I want to have the connection point. So that's why I just put my pliers on the wire again and then bend it back outwards, and making sure obviously that that final bend then pretty much meets up with the petal on the inside of that, and then that will be the next connection point, and then you just continue from there. So to then make the connection point, I just take my weaving wire again, continue it as if I was going to do another wrap, but then instead of going to the inside again, I'm just going to incorporate the outer wire, so just go around that instead, making that kind of figure of 8 weave instead. So if you have your 2 wires there, we're just going around like that, or the opposite direction if that's the way you're weaving, doesn't really matter. It's going to end up looking the same anyway. Bring that around. Obviously bring the tail here with you, take the very end, go through the inside again. So like I said, because it's fine wire, I want to make sure to make each connection point and wrap it twice. So this is the once, pull it down there, go around the in between the 2 again, go around the outside one, and then bring it back around again. So just like that, come down through the inner petal again, and then you just keep going like this. So then you want to keep wrapping along that bare base wire there. Then we have another connection point we need to just cross behind, and then wrap up to the next point where you want to make your next petal and bring that with you. So this is just how you build your rose here, and like I said, as you get further out you want to see about maybe making the petals larger and larger, because that makes them more natural as well. The outer petals would be larger. So just keep doing this. So now that I've gone further here, you can see the rose is pretty much formed now, and I've pretty much reached as well the size that I want this to be. So this is going to be my larger rose. And then what I just want to show you is how I'm going to finish off the edge as well, because obviously we're not going to then keep making more petals with the tail of wire. What we need to do though is incorporate the outer edge into the design as well, so make it all blend in. Because if you just leave it here, you can see I've weaved a little bit further, but instead of them bringing the tail further around and then connecting again, right now all the other petals on the outside here have just got bare wire. So what I want to make sure to do is blend them in. So I'm just going to keep going here with my weaving wire coiling around the next petal. Then I reached here, the very next connection point, so I just cross behind that just like the other times, and then keep coiling around. And now we're just doing it around the outer edge without worrying about connecting the next level of petals as well. So just do this all the way around to the other side. And then I kept making my way here all the way around the outer edge, and you can see it's all blending in nicely. Then what's left to do is finish off both the weaving wire but also obviously the base wire still. So what I'm going to do is I've ended up right down here where there's also a connection point, and there's no more space to weave there. So what I'm going to do is just bring it around the back again, that connection point, just to the other side of it, and just wrap it around just twice, just like that here. And that's just to kind of finish off this weaving wire nicely. It also helps secure it a bit more in place. Then I want to get rid of it by taking my flush cutters here and then going down where I've made my last wrap and cut off the excess really close to it. So get your cutters in there, cut off the excess, and then I take my chain nose pliers and I want to make sure to just squeeze this down. And I also like to then, as I'm squeezing it down, roll it a little bit in the same direction that the wrap is going in, around the base wire, because that really helps tuck it in. And get rid of it like that. You just want to make sure that you don't have the end of the wire you just cut off sticking out anywhere that can catch or scratch on anything obviously. So once you're then happy with that, then what we need to do as well is cut down the excess of the base wire, and all I'm going to do is cut that down right after the very last few wraps there. So put my cutters all the way up right next to them and cut off the excess. So just like that. And then if you need to, you can just kind of press it down a little bit. Otherwise then that's it finished off. And because we did those extra wraps and the whole thing is kind of wrapped together, it's still nice and secure. Obviously you don't want to go pulling on it, but you wouldn't want to do that anyway really. So this is then the final rose really, and you just got to make all the other ones that you want to have for your necklace as well. So here I then have all the roses ready that I want for my necklace, and where I've got to, so I finished them all off except for the tails in the middle there. So if you just want to use them as they are, not add beads, what you can just do as well is get rid of that tail the exact same way, just cut it down and tuck it away. But if you then want to add the beads like what I'm going to do, obviously that's what we're going to be using these little tails for. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. So what I'm going to do here is then first of all just choose what side you want to be the front if you have a preference. And then I'm going to take my bead and add it onto that little tail of the wire. It's coming out from the middle. Let that drop down, and then it's coming straight out from the middle. I'm going to go back down through the same little gap in the middle there. And then before pulling it all the way down, what I just want to do is I'm not going to leave the bead all the way down there, because what's going to end up happening then is the hole is going to end up facing outward. So it's basically going to sit like that, but I actually want the side of the bead to be facing outward. So I'm just going to pull it up a couple of millimeters, something like that, before then pulling the wire down, because then it pulls the hole further to the side and you get the side of the bead there sitting upwards, which is obviously what we want because we want that colour instead of the hole in the bead. Then I'm going to come up through, not just the middle again, but just move one level out, you could say, kind of the next petal out, come up through there. So we're basically going around a base wire and bringing it all the way, making sure it's then nice and tight. Then I'm going to go back down through the middle again, so I'm just going to have to push the bead a little bit. So I can go down through the same middle gap, like that. So I've now wrapped around a whole round around that base wire and coming up through the same gap, the one level out, the next petal out, just like that. And then I want to go through the bead again. It's just going to add extra security, because obviously it's kind of sitting on the outside here of the piece, but also because it's only 0.25mm wire, I want to go through it at least twice here. Bring that all the way through to the opposite side again. Then I'm going to come down on that side and the next petal out as well. And then if you want to, you could come around that base wire and go through the bead again if you can, if there's space in the bead. Or you can finish it off now, which is what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to move out one petal again, because what I just want to do now is basically wrap this little tail around a base wire a couple of times, because that's the most secure way to fasten it, so we can cut it off. And then come down through again. So basically almost coiling around a base wire, we're just having to go in and out of the petals. And as I'm doing this as well, do this a few times, I'm making sure to pull this pretty nice and tight, because what can then happen, because of all the wraps that we've done on all the petals along as we made the rose, we pull this and you can sometimes be able to feel a little click when you pull the wire here. That means that it nestles in between those wraps that are already there, which is obviously more secure, but also it makes it blend in nicely. So just like that. It's going to be nice and secure like that. Do it a few times. And then I want to cut off the excess by going right down to where the wire is coming out from and cutting that off. And then obviously, like usual, always make sure to tuck in that little end so it's not going to catch on anything. And once you've done that, then that's basically the bead attached. You can just go through and do this on all of them if you want to. So now I added the beads to all my roses here, so they're ready to put together. I'm just going to show you how I do that. It's really simple, just using jump rings here. And also I'm going to attach a chain. Obviously just what you want to be aware of is how you attach them together, especially mainly if you have the beads there. You want them all to be facing in the same direction. And also what I just want to mention is when you attach them together, what I prefer to do is where I'm going to attach my jump rings here, I'm not going to do it right where I have my last petal. So I kind of want to try and avoid adding it there, but I'm then adding it on the one just before it, and then obviously over here on the other side as well. So I'm not going to just add it there. It's kind of like the weakest point, you could say, so just to avoid that. So I also kind of like to lay them out like this before I then do it, because then you can get a really good impression of where you want to add your jump rings and put them together. So I'm just going to open my jump ring here first of all. And then I've already laid it out, so I know that I'm going to want to go through that petal there, so it's always the outer petals, and it's hanging in this direction. But then this one over here is that petal right there that I want to go through, but we need to make sure they're hanging in the right direction, so they're going to need to lay like this, which means I need to put them on basically opposite. So right now the beads are facing outwards from each other. And then I just want to close this back up. Just need to make sure I close it properly. And then as I open them back up, you could say, you can then see here they're going to lay correctly by adding them kind of back to back. And that's just mainly what you want to pay attention to, how to add them, and then also where on the roses there you want to add them as well. And obviously you want it to hang nicely in this little V shape. So you just want to add them all like this, and then also the chain on each side after the last one, and then add your clasp. And then once you've done all that, your necklace will be complete. And this is then what it looks like once I've attached all the pieces together here, and then also attached my chain up both sides. And then I've just finished it off here using a clasp and extended chain. And it's going to hang really nicely from the neckline as well, because obviously the middle one there is the larger one. We didn't attach the other ones straight across from each other, we did that at a bit of an angle, which is what gives that kind of V shape. So it's going to hang nicely from the neckline, and this is then how you make this necklace here, all these individual roses, and then attach them together. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching.